This is Dr. Kim, licensed clinical psychologist and host of Love to Heal. Today we have an amazing guest. He is a therapist and author of How to Be a Mental Health Savage. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So I know you have a very, very interesting backstory. Wanted to see just if you could touch on how you grew up and how you got into becoming a therapist.
Okay. I started my love for psychology when I was 12 and skipping classes to read books on psychology at the library,
Mhm.
and it just kind of grew. Since then, I decided to go into school for it. But what I realized growing up is there's a lot of, especially in the Black community, there's a lot of stigma for mental health. So when I would tell people I wanted to be a mental health therapist, they'd be like, okay. And but over time, I didn't care about it. I had to push through that, finish my bachelor's, master's, and go for my doctorates. And yeah, mental health has always been a passion of mine since I can remember, and it's all about promoting advocacy for me. It's okay to ask for help if you need it. If you're stressing, you don't have to go through that by yourself because society looks down on that. You can always ask for help. Yeah.
Incredible. And it's been extremely distressing for couples and for people who are single. What have you been noticing in your practice? I know I've seen a lot of arguing, a lot of potential separations, breakups, and divorces. People on the brink of divorce. Wanted to see what have you been noticing, and what are some things that have made them come a little bit further as far as bonding or regulating as far as their emotions.
Yeah. What I've noticed at my practice is prior to COVID, a couple can go to work, ignore all the big elephant in the room, ignore that and come back home late and probably like 5, 6 o'clock, and just kind of repeat the same cycle all over again. Like couples did not really get a chance to deal with the big issues, have that conversation. And when COVID happened, all of it just went to and now you have to face your partner almost 24/7. And I had a couple of clients, who come in and like, wow, I didn't know that I had to talk about all of this with my significant other. And what happens is because you're in front of the problem and you have to address the problem, and you did not have the coping skills or the communication skills to address the problem in the first place, now that you have to face it and deal with it, an issue happens. And so I see a lot of couples now, like, butting heads and, really trying to understand and navigate their relationship again from scratch. And I've seen, I had couples who are almost at the brink of divorce who decided, you know what, let us seek help. And I'm willing to now seek counseling because I can't use I don't have time as an excuse anymore. Because all we had, all my clients had last year was time, you know, and so couples are able to face the big issues, and not just with couples. Like I see that with families. Now you have to deal with your children. Now you have to understand that the teachers are not only saying, the teachers are not only saying that your kids are not doing well, or they had to see that for themselves. And so people now, I think I see people now confronted with issues, and some people are willing to face it, and some people are just willing to just give up. And I try to encourage my client, like, don't give up. What you're just noticing is something that can be handled with certain principles.
Agreed. And you know what's so interesting? I feel like because they have to work from home, or a lot of people are working from home, you could say get to or have to, but there's not that duality where sometimes there's that escapism. You're going to your office, you're dealing with other people, maybe you're socializing. So you
Mhm.
have that duality. So not only the space, but you feel like you have two worlds essentially.
Mhm.
And you're not able to see that contrast or even miss the person. So that absolutely makes it more difficult. Tell me about boundaries, because I've also noticed a lot with couples that people are invading each other's physical boundaries. There's more need for space, and actually, there's more intrusiveness. So people are intruding on boundaries physically, emotionally, financially. Can you tell us a little bit about boundaries and how you've seen them be violated during this time?
Wow, this is a very, very interesting question. So boundaries are, I guess, the person would not understand boundaries until they have to face it. So what do I mean? When if for many years you haven't set a boundary, for instance, if if you're in a relationship and for 10, 5, 6 months or years, you haven't set a boundary, and all of a sudden you feel the need to set a boundary, the person who will get upset without boundaries is the person who is benefiting from the boundary not being set. And so with a lot of couples prior to COVID, that's the primary issue. There was no need to set boundaries because there was always that time apart. Now that this time together, there's this need for physical space, emotional space, a break per se. And it's not just boundaries when it comes to space and relationships. Boundaries when it comes to intellectual needs.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, if you're at work, for instance, you might get your intellectual needs met, right? If you're home with your partner, right, it's tough to get your intellectual needs met when you have to deal with an emotional thing that you haven't dealt with before. And so I always encourage people to set boundaries regardless of what the person feels. If not, they will fall into that pattern of people pleasing. And that you know how it goes. And the people pleasing is one of those draining things that like sucks the life out of a relationship. And if you fall into that pattern, like it's just something that the longer you wait, the tougher it is to get out of that habit.
It's true. And I call people pleasing nice people problems. So I think
Yeah,
we get kind of excited when we have those type of clients because
yeah,
we're just teaching them to like continue being kind, but
hmm,
take better care of yourself. So yes,
yeah,
people pleasing can get really out of control. And that's where the people pleasers actually hit their brink because they feel like,
yeah,
yeah, now I see it. It's in my face. I have no time for me,
hmm,
completely ignoring myself. And so it's not like forced time away anymore. So you're
hmm,
right. I actually wasn't thinking about that, but that is absolutely true. People that suffer from codependency or reformed
yes,
codependency, or people
yes,
be very kind and haven't learned yet that some people will take advantage of that, even if they're not malintended. So I love that fact. That is so true. Let's talk about intellectual boundaries for a second, because I know when they're talking about politics or talking about ideas, beliefs, sometimes partners will try to shove certain ideas down their throat. It might not even be about politics, it could just be simply about theories or how they feel about the future. How do you feel like they need to approach certain subjects to maybe try to uplift or inspire rather than um, force an idea down someone's throat? What do you think the approach should be as far as relationships go?
I think the approach should be to tone down expectations. There's a lot of times when individuals have conversations with each other, they have an expectation that I'm going to change this person's mind. I'm going to change this person's worldview, right? Acceptance is the ability to understand what you can and cannot control. You can't control the other person. You can't control what they believe. All you can control is you, right? And so if you're saying or you're talking about your intellectual beliefs and the other person is not being receptive, that's okay. It's not your job. Somewhere down the line, the person might change their mind, but your job as a person is just to state your opinion, state what you believe in, and let it go. Take off that expectations. Yeah.
I love that because I think it has a counter effect when you're really forceful, and I think a lot of ideas and beliefs are about timing and life experience. So just holding their hand through it can actually be a lot more helpful than actually just forcing it. So I absolutely agree with that. And let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about financial boundaries because sometimes people neglect the idea of financial abuse or financial boundaries, even in a way again that's not so malintended, but people that are maybe intrusive or forcing someone to do something, not forcing, but influencing someone to maybe pull out a credit card that they don't want to pull out, something like that. Do you ever see that create conflict in relationships, financial boundary, intrusiveness, or violations?
Oh yes, I see that a lot, and I'll just give a general example without this couple that I'm working with right now. They have extreme love for each other, but when it comes to the financial boundaries part, like there's a tendency for one person, the main person in the relationship, to kind of like, hey, I'll pay for everything for you, and she doesn't want that. He wants to assert himself, by taking financial dominance. And we had to have that conversation of, hey, she's her own person. If she does not want to drive a Mercedes, that's fine. I know she's a reflection, and she's a reflection of you, and that's what you imagine. But keep in mind that she is her own person, right? She wants to drive a minivan, that's fine, you know. And so I see it's one of those things I see mostly from the male part to the female part in a relationship. And I kind of wonder, like, what's your opinion about it? Like, is is wanting at a certain lifestyle good for a relationship, even if the person is not all about the flamboyant, you know, money thing?
Yeah, I think
What?
it's I think a lot of times particularly men and some women, they really idealize the idea of creating a very um, unattainable sometimes idea of a lifestyle, and sometimes it's attainable depending on how hard they work, obviously.
Mhm.
But that sometimes does not match up with the partner's point of view, and sometimes they value different things, and it can even be a lot of pressure for the other person to have to hold up that partner while they're going for things that are potentially superficial in their imagination, or potentially just too much on their plate. Let's say
Yeah.
they don't want to manage 3 to 5 houses, something like that, or
Hmm.
6 cars, whatever it is. And sometimes there's due diligence to do on, with maintaining certain things like that. And we've seen that with different clients of different socioeconomic status backgrounds. But yes, absolutely, it doesn't always match up, and that's hard because in a way they feel like you're killing their dream. I'm giving you these things. I'm being benevolent. They think
Yeah.
that this is all good stuff. So the way that you come at someone with those kind of dreams and those aspirations and wanting to take care of you is you've got to be gentle, because you have to understand that's so aligned with their self-concept that you don't want to be reactive. If you have to bring a couple therapists in to deliver this message, do it. But it's so ingrained a lot of times in their identity. Sometimes they had a childhood where maybe the mom wasn't taken care of properly, or haphazardly. So they want to be able to do that rescuing, or they just want to create that kind of fantastic life, which really is a display of love for them. So you want to be gentle with coming across to men or women that want to take care of you in that manner.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be complex, but a lot of times they're thinking, why is it? And sometimes they'll even attract women who push that away for whatever reason. That could be because of
Hmm.
earlier dynamics, as we know. So they're
Hmm.
attracting women who are pushing that lifestyle away, and they're wanting to go ahead and be either a hero or just give it an amazing lifestyle to them. So yeah,
Hmm.
be gentle with it, be loving, understand that it's probably coming from a good place, even if it feels forced. But you got to find a way to maneuver that in a gentle way, and potentially with a mediator.
Yes.
But that is so interesting. Yes, it really is. Back to physical boundaries, because I think it's so important. If people are working together in the same home, what can they do to create physical space, or what can they say? What's your opinion of how to maneuver that?
So I go by I counsel bit based on the BLT approach. Be yourself, live with intention, and trust your instincts. Be yourself is what I try to emphasize the most, because if you are not the true version of yourself, you're going to attract situations and people into your life that are attracted to your mask and not you,
Mhm.
right? So a lot of people are wearing masks right now, and they don't even know they're wearing masks, and they're attracting situations into their life. So for instance, if you're in a relationship and you want to pretend like you're okay with loud music in the room, in the house, right? You can only pretend for so long. You just you can only pretend for so long. So thing is, be yourself. Tell your partner, hey, this is what I prefer, right? Again, take away that expectation, because the person may not respond the way you want to. This is what I want, and this is how we can get it. Now, if the person is receptive, all fine and dandy. But the person is not receptive, then you as a person will need to decide that, hey, how can I create this boundary myself? Should I put on headphones in my house
Mhm.
and walk around? Or can I go to a different place, while I need to have my own personal mindfulness or meditation time? And those are the things that needs to happen. But that cannot happen if you're not yourself, and if you cannot assert your boundaries in the right way.
Oh, I love that. That is really being solid. And I think people a lot of times push that away. I deal with a lot of people that deal with breakups, and they
Mhm.
think that asserting themselves is going to push the other person away. In fact, it's more of a magnet because you're showing how self-assured you are. And
Yes.
regardless if it's a submissiveness or dominance, that doesn't matter. What people are attracted to are people that are confident, that are centered, that like what they're doing, that love what they're doing. There are some types, some profiles, like we know, that are potentially threatened by that, but those are the ones that are extremely toxic. So everybody else we're talking about is typically attracted to people who are able to speak their mind, obviously
Yes.
in a centered, loving way, and know what they want in life. So it's actually really dually beneficial to actually say what you need in the
Mhm.
household. It shows that you care about yourself and that
Mhm.
you're willing to be independent if that's what it takes, if the person continues either crossing the line or not respecting your boundaries. So I love that, absolutely. Headphones, and
Mhm.
then telling the person, your partner, that you need some space, and then asking them, what do they need? Because I want to give this back in return. It
Yeah.
sounds so simple, but they have to habituate to it if they haven't gotten used to it, right? It's amazing. So I know you wrote the book Breakup Code. Do you have anything that comes to mind that you feel like were the takeaways for that book, Relationship Code, as far as enhancing a relationship?
So in relationship code, I kind of took a step into and a person's entire lifestyle. So look at your childhood, right? Look at your relationship with your parents. Look at your relationship with your friends. Look at your relationship with
Mm.
everybody, right? And examine what you need and how to move forward with that, right? So relationship code was one of those things that like I try to help people see things from a different perspective. If your father was not available, right, and you're not in a relationship with a man who's not available, what are you doing? Because that upset you throughout childhood. Like, what are you doing? And that's where the living with intention comes in, right? If your mom was overly, dominant and, emotionally abusive, and now you're in a relationship with someone who's that way, what are you doing? Because we as human beings tend to attract, our parents, like you already know, people that remind, because that's our comfort zone, right? So my challenge in the book is to go beyond your comfort zone, right? If this is normal to you and it's not okay, find a way to get out, right? And find a way to communicate that effectively.
Mm.
And just conscious awareness of what you're doing and what you're showing people, because we are constantly attracting things into our life that we don't even understand. Yeah.
I love that. So people a lot of times are attracted to avoiding people, especially if they had parents that were avoidant
Mm-hmm.
or that neglected them. So they're chasing someone who's not attainable.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be exciting at first, but it just creates so much pain and even obsession, because then the more the door closes on them, the more the person's scarce, which creates more obsession. So I love that. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
That created pain early on. What are you doing? I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So we got to relationship. Now you have a brand new book called How to Be a Mental Health Savage. So critical at this time, critical always, but even more critical right now. What are the take homes? What can we expect to find in Mental Health Savage?
Okay. So I wrote Mental Health Savage in the beginning of the pandemic last year. And it was okay. I was off work for a month, and I already started writing it, but I had to create something that people can engage in, because as of that time, more people had to be at home. And a lot of people I saw on social media were affected by, different types of mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, just from being cooked up at home. So Mental Health Savage is all based on social media interactions. There are hashtags in the book, and each hashtag comes with a challenge, right? And that challenge can be done and posted online so someone else can see this is how X, Y, and Z copes with depression or anxiety, or does their morning workouts, diets, and everything. Um, Mental Health Savage takes a holistic approach. What are you eating? How are you sleeping? How much exercise do you have a day? What are your friends like? What's your relationship like? It looks at every single detail of mental health, not just mental health itself. And that's why I kind of like it, because I can wake up one morning and pick how to create 30 minutes of self-reflection daily,
Mhm.
and read that chapter, right? And at the end of the chapter, I can look at the challenge for the chapter and I can do it, right? And so that's what I really, really, really like about the book. And that's the feedback I've gotten from the book is I can pick what I want, drop the book down, do the challenge, and keep that same consistency and routine going, because mental health is not a one-stop process. It is a consistent and persistent thing that you need to do every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's maintenance. And we get that grilled into our heads when we go to
Yeah.
school. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think it creates really beautiful people that are a bit more resilient so that we can go ahead and take care of other people. But that is actually the key, is that it's work and it is maintenance. I think there's some level of disappointment with, again, partners and friendships that I've been seeing lately. Wanted to get your take on it. What do you think it is? I think we spoke about it earlier, is that friendships, they could be superficial, but once you start digging in or you're having those low points, maybe they're talking about themselves a lot. Maybe they're not asking you questions because they're not feeling good. Or on the other hand, you could start noticing some personality traits that you were able to ignore because you were so busy with your life before. How do you maneuver that? What do you think it is? What's your litmus test with friendships, with partnerships? How do you feel? How do you judge whether one is good for you or one is not so good for you?
So the last part of the BLC approach is trust your instincts. Like I say that I mean, it sounds very spiritual, vibe, but your body will tell you when something is not right.
Mm,
We just
mhm,
have to learn to listen to the language of our bodies. If you're around somebody and every time you're around that person you feel anxious, something is off. If you finish talking to someone or helping someone with something and you all of a sudden feel drained, and this is something you feel all the time, your body is communicating something with you. So I tell people, say, hey, go to any friend that you have or any relationship that you have, really dig in and have a self-reflection in that relationship, right? Think about what you're doing for the person and what the person is doing for you, right? If there is no balance, there will always be a discomfort attached to that, because you're emptying out your cup to someone and somehow, some way, your cup is not getting refilled.
mhm, mhm.
That's when the draininess starts to happen. If you have a friend who's always calling you for help, and then when you call for help, all of a sudden they're non-existent, red flag,
And then
right?
and then what if you're calling them and they're only reinforcing you because you're not doing so well? That's the other thing that I've noticed with clients talking about their friends. The only time they're really listening actively is when they're talking about something that's not so good for them, maybe not so good for their reputation, or makes the other person feel lifted because the other person's not doing well. So it doesn't feel genuine. I'm just noticing a lot of insecurity around what my clients are telling me as far as friendships and relationships. And again, I think you're right. It's the physiology speaking to you. And I think also they're not necessarily excited about your dreams. And that's
Yes.
another piece. And it's hard. You have to know, because it could be a long-term friendship. But you have to just figure out the boundary. How much time do you want to spend with that person? And how much are you willing to be drained? Maybe not at all, maybe once a year.
Yeah,
But
and it kind of also goes back to intentional living. Like, if your friend, and this might sound really harsh, if you are not benefiting from a relationship, right? If the relationship you're trying to build is not going to push you towards your goal, then why?
mm,
You know, and when I say this, it kind of sounds like, okay, you're trying to figure out, you're trying to get somebody who's going to do something. That's not the case. If, for instance, you want to be a movie star, right? And your friend is, into a whole lot of, maybe criminal activity or something that can taint your image, right? Why? Right? But I understand that a lot of people, from what I see, like, a lot of people have strong attachments to pain.
mm,
You're in a situation where you're suffering from your relationship, but you want to hold on to it because it's all you know, is what you're used to, and is what you feel you can handle, right? It's good to let go of that hot mug so your hands don't burn. Just let go of it. When you let go of it, the hot mug might cool down as a result of you letting go. It might cool down and you might be safe enough to pick it up. But if you're constantly tolerating the things that are affecting your life, it will keep being there because you're not asserting yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're right, and I think adding to your life, because sometimes it's hard for people to take something away, just like it is when people are trying to get rid of the binge eating or binge drinking, something like that. And I
Mhm.
think adding too, it's like if you have a project that's attracting other people, if you're doing something that you're passionate about, if you're meeting new people, maybe they're not even in your state, but now we can talk to people on the phone that have similar interests or similar
Mhm.
vibrations, energies,
Mhm.
frequencies. If you're someone that supports other people and their dreams and you're actually building them up, then you've got to start being willing to be attracted to those type of people and be
Yes.
open to that. Because you deserve it if that's what you're putting out into the world. Same thing when it comes to breakups, like being able to reassess that and start adding into your life
Your life. Mhm.
projects of people. There's incredible people out there, and I think people just their worlds get a little small, especially now. But it's actually bigger than ever in a lot of sense. So it's just something to think about. But
Yeah.
yes,
I have. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, please.
I had this thing that just came to my mind right now. Like, think about any relationship like a tree. I don't know if you heard of the story before. So some people in your lives are supposed to be leaves. They're in your life for a season. When they're done with what they're supposed to do, you let go. They fall off your tree. Some people are branches. Any wind or any bad thing may make them fall off your tree. And other people in your life are roots. They provide nourishment to your tree. They keep you grounded. They keep you safe. They keep you stable, right? The issue a lot of people are having right now is they're holding on to leaves. And anytime a plant has a dead leaf on it, right? For too long, it sucks the life out of the tree. And so that's kind of how I navigate even my own personal friendships, is understanding the difference between my leaves, my branches, and my roots.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. That's too good. I think we need to leave them with that. You've been
Yeah.
So how can they find how to be a mental health savage?
How to be a mental health savvy can be found at Barnes& and Nobles, Amazon, or you can visit my website, www.tammytalks.com, or my Facebook page at Tami Odimayo.
You're incredible. I could listen to you all day. I have to have you back on. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.